Welcome again. We're still analyzing the book titled Citizen and Subject, Contemporary Africa and the Legacy of Late Colonialism by Mahmood Mamdani, and we're now shooting at the Commune, which is here in Braamfontein. The Commune is a radical Pan-African bookstore. It's more than just a bookstore. It is also a hub for discussions. This place aligns with the book we are discussing, as the books you'll find in this store are political and mostly speak about cultural unity of African nations.
So joined by your beautiful ladies, Sinalo and Funeka, Mdletshe, so I would like for us, just to kickstart, to make a relation between the book and the profession, and maybe you can, just explain on how does the book actually helps you appreciate the planning profession, and also how does it help you to understand your own personal areas of interest. Maybe you can use like your research report just to answer this question.
Okay, so guys, as she has already said, we're still talking about the book Citizen and Subject, Contemporary Africa and the Legacy of Late Colonialism. I think from the title we can then deduce that the book is essentially about the power of colonialism, right, and its influence on shaping the urban fabric in African cities, right?
Yeah.
And so with this book, it helps me understand that in order for us to move forward as Africans and developing African cities, we need to understand the past, and that includes apartheid, especially in the context of South Africa, as well as colonialism. It's a taboo topic because a lot of people do not necessarily want to talk about it. It's a sensitive topic, and we understand, but we need to talk about the past in order to understand the present so that we can plan for the future, right? And so when it comes to planning, I think as planners we have a huge responsibility in creating just and equitable communities for our people. And by our people, please, not viewers, we are talking about everybody, because this is a rainbow nation, right? And so that includes your blacks, your whites, your Indians, your coloreds. You get the vibes, you understand? So I think it's important that we think about all of those things, and as a planning system, or as a planning profession rather, it's important that when we are planning for the future, we take those things into consideration. As it currently stands, our cities, they still show evidence of the apartheid spatial planning system, right? And so we need to go back and look at where did we go wrong? We know there were a lot of wrongs that were done in the past, but how can we fix those things? And obviously, you cannot deal with something that you do not understand, right? And so you have to understand the past in order to plan for the future. Now, linking the book to my research topic, is about analyzing the provision of low-rent social housing initiatives in Hillbrow. So Hillbrow, just to give a little bit of context, Hillbrow is a residential neighborhood in the inner city of Johannesburg, right? And before 1994, Hillbrow was a neighborhood that was for the white minority, and then the black majority were located in areas such as Soweto. I mean, we all know about the Group Areas Act, right? And so with that being done at the time, then came the post-apartheid era. And when that came, a lot of the white minorities that were in Hillbrow and all of these other residential neighborhoods that were in the city, they then moved to areas like Sandton, right? And so with them moving, the buildings were then left empty. And then because there was a gap, people wanted to come to the city for job opportunities. Then they saw, okay, this space is empty, we can actually live here. And then they came onto the space. But obviously, with regards to infrastructure, there needs to be management, right? It needs to be managed, and it needs to be, what's the word? Maintained. Thank you so much, Sinalo. It needs to be maintained. And as the city continues to grow, the population as well was growing, right? So with that happening, there was now a high demand for residents, right? Residential accommodation. And so people then, as the population grows, the demand grows higher, and obviously the rent is going to go high and so forth. Then the South African Constitution, according to the South African Constitution, everybody has a right to adequate housing.
Yeah.
And so with that being said, there's a gap. There are a lot of people that need affordable accommodation, and this affordable accommodation wasn't necessarily being provided. And so they came with the social housing institutions, such as currently we have the Johannesburg Housing Company, and we also have the Johannesburg Social Housing Company. And so these are just some of the examples. We also have Madula Moho. I'm sorry if I'm saying it wrong, but guys, you understand. Hey, social housing institution as well. And those social housing institutions, they aim to provide affordable rental accommodation for the people that earn a lower income, especially in areas like Hillbrow, because a majority of the people that stay there do not necessarily earn much. Maybe on average they earn 1,500 per month, of which is extremely low considering the standard in South Africa, the economic situation of our country as it currently stands. And so as I was analyzing the space, I saw that there was a gap between the provision of low rent social housing and the rent, right? And so I saw that a lot of these social housing institutions are aiming to create affordable housing accommodations, rentals rather. But now a lot of these housing rentals do not necessarily accommodate the income that these people are earning, and you'd see that it's mostly suited for medium income earning people. And so there was a gap there, and that with that gap I saw that, okay, what are the initiatives that are being taken to provide housing for these people? Because if you think about it, that space has a lot of colonial history, and so it does have an impact in the way that people live in the space. You understand? And so that's how I was then able to understand my research topic, as well as to link it to the book and understand the book better as well. Yeah,
I think one other thing that is quite important from the book that I could say that it relates to our topics would be the fact that that's around governance, because the main issue around maintenance, management in these spaces, it then speaks back to governance. It then questions on how functioning our governance system is, and also it then also made me actually to understand better my topic. My topic is about, understanding, examining the responses to different forms of urban land occupation. And when we talk about things that are around housing access, land access, there's always something that has to do with, the informality and formality that comes there. So it then makes us understand, having to actually read this book made me understand that it's important for us to understand that some of the laws cannot be actually nationalized to actually speak to everyone. Considering that we are colonized in our minds, it's difficult for us to actually enjoy some of the spaces and actually to be able to, to promote access for people. So one other thing that we actually managed to came across, the word from the book, legacy of late colonialism. It's a legacy, but you could also say that it's something that is still continuing.
True. That
it's not colonialism by by someone of a different color, skin complexion, your skin. It also has a relationship with it. Now it's more of a colonialism that is triggered or that is pushed by someone of the same color.
True.
But from a different power structure, from another level of power. So it's something like that. The main issue, the reason why we have issues around access to land, access to housing, it goes back to governance, it goes back to the power structure that we have. Maybe if you can just like give us some profound statements, some quotations that make us see on like the focus of this course,
There's a quote in the book, chapter 2, Citizen and Subject. So the quote is, "The city is a battlefield of cultures." And so with that, it means that obviously, since we're talking, let's take it to the context of South Africa, Johannesburg. Okay, so Johannesburg has a lot of tribes within the city. We have it's a multi-tribal city, if I may say. We have Mazulu, we have Amaxhosa, we have Bedis, etc. All of these people have different values, different belief systems, as well as different cultures. However, they all need to feel welcome in a space, so the spaces must be inclusive. And so that means that the planners have the responsibility to develop spaces that are inclusive and will accommodate each and every one of those tribes. That also includes white people, right? Because when we speak about the Rainbow Nation, it includes everyone, Indian, coloreds, you get the vibes. And so I think it actually holds us accountable as planners, Uguti. We have to develop spaces that are diverse and consider the different cultural beliefs as well. Otherwise, we are then still perpetuating the same concept of colonialism, in which there's spaces where people, a certain group of people doesn't feel like they belong, or you shouldn't be even allowed to access that space. So, Sinalo, would you say this book can be used as a tool of analysis? And would you say it helped you analyze the relationships between the state and civil society? Would you also say you can recommend this book, as does it actually have a couple of lessons for the future politicians, policymakers, lawmakers, as well as us as future urban planners?
Yeah, so the book can be used as a tool of analysis in various ways. So firstly, by understanding and examining the political, your social and your political dynamics, so it helps us to distinguish between citizens and subjects, and also through the examining of development and also as challenges of governance that you would find in places such as your African country. So Mamdani's examination of how colonial rule and had manipulated ethnic identities, it's something that can be used to analyze the conflicts that we have, your ethnic conflicts and also your identity politics. So furthermore, the book also reveals that the bifurcated state structure that you would find, where in urban areas are governed by civil law and your rural areas are governed by customary law. It's also from all the avenues that the book talks about, like all your different themes and all your main highlights, that starting from your decentralized despotism, your rural-urban divide. Yeah. The one that I feel like it speaks more, it's something that is quite new. It's the issue around the post-colonial continuity, which we can all agree on that. Yeah. That it needs to be democratized, and also there needs to be like a balance between your decentralization and your centralization, your balance between participation and representation, your balance between autonomy and your alliance, which is something that is very important. So for planners, your lawmakers, your politicians, the one thing that I can say for them would be they need to learn from this book, learn the importance of recognizing and addressing the enduring impacts of the colonial governance. And they can also carefully design decentralization policies that actually avoid perpetuating that decentralized despotism. They also need to develop some strategies to mitigate this ethnic division, and also further prioritize policies that actually address disparities between urban and rural areas, which is something that is very important.
Greetings, viewers. Today we are joined by Nkululeko, better known as Dr. Beta. Now, Dr. Beta is a clinical psychologist, and he joined us today so that we can have a discussion about the book
citizen and subject. How are you doing, Doctor?
Very well, thanks. Thank you so much for inviting me as well.
Thank you so much for coming through. So we would like to know, what was your initial thoughts when you saw the title of the book, Citizen and Subject, Contemporary Africa and the Legacy of Late Colonialism?
Yeah, I think for me it captured me actually. The fact that it's just saying citizen and subject. Already I'm thinking we are maybe the subject. Already I'm thinking black. I'm thinking colonialism. I'm thinking, apartheid. I'm thinking oppression. But nonetheless, I think it's a very loaded title for a book actually.
Okay, so in what ways do you think the legacy of colonialism has shaped the mental health landscape in Africa and perhaps beyond Africa?
Very important question. I don't like the word legacy because I feel like it's implying some positivity in it. But how we best, understand and how I best respond to that is that I think it has shaped, particularly around the black race or in terms of context of people of color, they've lived them with so much anger, with so much pain, which is then actually a secondary emotion. But the primary emotion that they're feeling at that particular time or during this eras that we live when we reflect, it's just a high level of anger and pain in terms of how things were done, whether it's from the Native Land Acts or the segregation or the oppression that happened or the violent acts that actually were then bestowed upon the majority by a minority as well. So I think definitely in terms of that, there's a lot of anger and unexpressed or unaddressed emotions.
Oh, yes, definitely. And do you think there are any contributions that could be done by clinical psychologists to help in contributing, decolonizing the knowledge of the production and practice in the field of planning, of psychology?
Oh, very important question as well. I think what's very important there is that there's a lot that can be done. By virtue of a person being in therapy, I always tell them this, that I'm about to have yourself, almost reintroduction of who you are. So there's no potent and more powerful person than the person who's in therapy, because there you acknowledge, you have insight, you're aware, and you gain a lot of perspective around lives and understanding that you are not always right. So in terms of how we can contribute to that decolonization, by virtue of you being in therapy, you are then actually forming part of that process of decolonizing thyself. And we need to emancipate that. And the only thing that we can do in terms of actually structuring that is actually through the mind. Certain fights are no longer in the streets or certain buildings. Fights are now in the realms of academia as well, in terms of how we can liberate thyself. So conscientization is important.
Oh, thank you so much, Doctor. That was quite insightful. We really appreciate you coming here. In light of our fruitful discussion of the book, we hope that planners, policymakers, and even just anyone living in an African city will be more cognizant of the legacy of colonialism as it continues to shape our urban spaces. And as planners, we must strive to decolonize our planning practices and prioritize community-centered approaches and address the unequal power dynamics that perpetuate these special injustices. And as we reflect on this book, Citizen and Subject, we are reminded that planning is not just about the physical spaces, but it's also about the social and political relationships that shape these physical spaces. Let's take insights from this book to heart and just work towards creating a more nuanced understanding of the complex forces that shape our cities. Together we can, and I strongly believe we can, create a more just and equitable urban future that honors the dignity and the humanity of all citizens. That's it from this episode. We hope that you enjoyed each and every minute of it.